Welcome back. The economy added 271,000 jobs last month, much better than expected. In fact, October hiring was the strongest of the year. I want to bring in Steve Moore from the Heritage Foundation and Steve Cortes from BGC Partners. Steve Moore, what's standing out to you in today's report?
Well, Maria, if you really want to understand why so many Americans hate Wall Street, here we get this great report on jobs. You know, not great, but very good. I mean, we got a lot of jobs, 300,000 almost when you include the revisions upward. We saw a nice little bump up in wages finally. And Wall Street, it looks like they're catching pneumonia. I mean, look, let me make it very clear to people, because this is very simple as an economist. If people have more jobs, if they're earning more money, guess what? They can go into stores and they can buy more things and the value of stocks goes up. But this idea that creating more jobs is bad for the economy because the Fed is going to, raise interest rates is so lunatic, and that's why people hate Wall Street. Yeah, because Main Street wants jobs.
Yeah, but I don't want to talk about that for a second. I want to get your analysis on the jobs number. Put the market reaction aside for a second. I mean, should we believe these numbers?
Yeah, I just had to get that off my chest. But look, I'm surprised by this, Maria, because so many of the other indicators of the economy we've seen for the last 2 or 3 weeks have been kind of flat, whether it's manufacturing or housing and so on. And so this does look to me like a little bit of a lagging indicator rather than a leading indicator, because I just don't see this. You know, Trish was right. What we need is about 8 to 10 more of these kind of reports of 250,000 plus jobs to really see this economy strong. The other thing I would note is the conundrum of this economy, Maria, is that here we've had, we have an official 5% unemployment rate today, and yet we still don't see people entering the workforce. Did you know, Maria, even in this report, we have 90 million Americans over the age of 16 that are not working, even though officially the unemployment rate's lower than it's been in 10 years. Yeah. Nobody can explain that.
I want to change the conversation briefly. Joanie and I, off camera, were talking about this merger and acquisition craziness that we've seen. I think we just hit $5 trillion, an all-time record. And what does that mean? Of course, for the corporation, it's great. And they say it's synergy. Well, synergy to the rest of us means layoffs.
Synergy.
And so that is going to be keeping some pressure, I think, on this number for a while.
Steve Cortes, jump in here, please. I know you've been you've been in the same camp pretty much as Keith McCullough. You didn't think that the Fed was going to raise rates. You didn't think that the economy was doing all that much. What's your reaction to this?
Right. And by the way, I still don't think the Fed is going, believe it or not. We'll see. And I think that if they do, the risks are incredibly dangerous for the global economy, particularly for EMs. But regarding this report, I know you've spoken a lot about the participation rate. It's even worse, actually, than it looks, because it's the lowest since the 1970s. But that's because that's when women started really entering the workforce. If you look at men, we are at all-time lows for their participation rate. So I don't think we should throw a parade because of one good print. It is a good print, undeniably so. When we average those September and October together, you end up with 200,000, which is where we've been for quite a long while. Let's see what the November print is, which will be released in December. And then I think if you, let's say you print 300 plus, okay, then I would concede that maybe there's a new trend here and maybe a parade is warranted.
Yeah. And I just want to add to a point, because I know, Steve, you just mentioned labor participation rate, but we did see 313,000 people enter back into the workforce, which is a good sign. And we need to see those numbers increase every month. And we haven't. Like, it's been kind of flat. So that was actually a good number in this report. Also, professional and business services added 78,000 jobs. That's huge. And those are the professional, high-level jobs. So that's a really good sign as well that will drive wages.
All right, we will leave it there.
Maria,
Steve,
could I add something?
Go ahead. Final point here. Go ahead, real quick.
About the labor force participation rate.
Yeah.
The other big conundrum about this is people think the reason the labor force participation rate is down is because so many baby boomers are retiring. Yeah. That's only a small part of the picture. In fact, I looked at the labor force participation rate by age, and guess what, Maria? The labor force participation rate has fallen the most by young people, not by old people.
That's a really good point.
That's troublesome.
Thank you very much for that point. That's an important one.